You can close your eyes for a moment. Picture the Nile's bank just after sunset. A light wind moves through the reeds. The water ripples, catching a thin band of gold in the distance. Drums beat a steady rhythm like the heartbeat of an ancient kingdom. In this place, people believed their king was more than a man. The pharaoh was both ruler and one who touched the realm of the gods, and so a pharaoh's marriage was never just private business. It was a ritual of order. The Egyptians call that order Mat. Mat is quiet. It's the even breath of the universe, a river that rises on time, a sun that appears on schedule, harvests that arrive as promised. When a pharaoh celebrated a wedding, the people rejoiced not only for a couple, they rejoiced because another link in Mat had clicked into place. A proper marriage strengthened order. A misplaced one might knock the rhythm off. You might hear footsteps on cool stone. Priests pass by, carrying incense. They know a pharaoh's wedding holds the meanings. The first is a sacred rite before the gods. The second is legitimacy before humankind. These two layers sit like the coats of paint on the temple wall. Between them, the shape of the nation is drawn. Who's queen? Who bears an heir? Who holds the keys to ritual? Who stands behind the curtain of the harem? In stories told by elders to children in the Delta, one pair returns like a repeating chorus. Osiris and Isis, they are the sacred model of union. Isis gathered each piece of Osiris's body, returned her husband to life, and from then on the couple symbolized fertility, renewal, and the belief that the right union restores the right order. When the pharaoh married his queen, Egyptians saw that divine model mirrored on earth, marriage not only to beget descendants, but to reflect a heavenly pattern. You can sense the slow pace of palace life, so slow that a single ritual might stretch across the night like a long breath. Torchlight glints on gold, yet everything remains soft. There are no loud shouts, only steady prayers, like water dripping into a stone basin. Here, marriage ties together three strands: bloodline, religion, politics. No one cuts one strand free. They twist them together, dash tightly, to gentle music. A priest speaks blessings, invoking Mat as justice, Ammon's protection, Ra's wisdom, and Hathor's abundance. Each divine name arrives like a slow step. Listeners bow slightly. They understand that from this moment, the queen is not only the king's wife, she is the one who will help him keep the universe's pace within the bounds of the kingdom. If you notice, the title Great Royal Wife is the anchor that keeps the ship of power from drifting in high winds. Behind these titles lies a simple reality. The children of this marriage will carry legitimacy. On the walls you'll see princes and princesses stand behind their parents, lotus blossoms in hand, eyes set forward. They say nothing, their silence is a promise. The line will be kept, the order passed on, the throne secured. But Egypt is not only temples. There is desert, there are envoys' letters, there are borders. From those borders, processions sometimes arrive with gifts and sometimes with a foreign bride. So even in the pharaoh's marriage, diplomacy has its place for now. We note it gently. That door opens when needed. We'll speak of it in detail later. For this moment, stay with the deeper layer. Why the right person, the right bloodline matters so much. Egyptians believe the royal blood bore ritual purity not because it was a different color, but because it carried a task to keep Mat flowing. Walk along a tomb wall in the Valley of the Kings, and you'll find the pharaoh standing beside the queen, sometimes a close relative. They're like twin pillars holding up a roof, not too high, not too low straight. Even at the wedding, many things are set in their proper places: the crown, the ring, the collar, the name plaques, and the vase. They're not only beautiful, they're signs that everyone at court can read, marking that a new order has settled into shape. In a corner, a scribe dips a reed pen into black ink and notes a few spare lines on papyrus. Names, titles, date, witnesses. Behind those economical lines lies a very large stone, the legality of the future. If you listen closely, you'll hear a final question, softer than a sigh: who is allowed to marry the pharaoh? The answer can wait. In this opening, it's enough to know that rules exist because they keep time for a world larger than to people. A pharaoh's marriage isn't for spectacle, it's so the nation can sleep in peace. At night, and the torches gutter, the wind fades, but order remains a thin thread drawn across the sky. Tomorrow the sun will rise, fields will green again, and the keepers of the rhythm, the king and the queen, will stand in their places, silent, continuing a role written long ago. When you open your eyes, we'll go deeper into the first rule: bloodline and legitimacy, where royal unions form like stone-paved corridors inside the palace. As the sun sinks below the horizon, casting its golden glow across the vast Egyptian landscape, the towering stone walls of the pharaoh's palace began to cool in the twilight. We shift our gaze inward, into the heart of Egypt's most sacred halls, where a question reverberates through time: who can marry the pharaoh? In our last chapter, we explored the divine aspect of the pharaoh's marriage, uncovering the sacred union that upheld Egypt's cosmic order. But now we delve deeper into a more intricate layer: the royal bloodline, the key to maintaining the legitimacy of Egypt's throne. Marriage, for the pharaohs, was never just about personal choice or romantic love. It was about safeguarding the divine order that governed all life in Egypt, and for this, the purity of the royal bloodline was paramount. In this world of divine rule, the pharaoh's marriage was not a simple union of hearts, but a calculated decision to ensure the continuity and legitimacy of Egypt's rule for generations to come. The marriages within the royal family were carefully crafted to ensure that the bloodline remained untainted by foreign influence, and that the throne remained firmly within Egypt's divine grasp. The great royal wife, a title of power and responsibility. In the grand halls of the pharaoh's palace, one title stood above all others: the great royal wife. This was no ordinary title. It was the cornerstone of Egypt's political and ritual power. Reserved for the woman who was married to the king, this title carried significant weight, not just in terms of companionship, but in securing the legitimacy of the king's reign. The great royal wife was more than just the king's wife. She was the guardian of Egypt's royal bloodline, the key to securing the divine right of the pharaoh to rule. This marriage wasn't based solely on love or affection. It was an institutional necessity designed to ensure the stability of Egypt's throne. Marrying the right woman, one of noble blood, meant securing the legitimacy of the king's rule. The great royal wife was often depicted alongside the pharaoh in tombs and temples, immortalized in sacred images that reflected her essential role in maintaining the cosmic order. Example of Thutmose and Hatshepsut, a half-sibling union. The story of Thutmose II and his sister Hatshepsut is a prime example of how royal marriages were more than just personal unions. They were strategic moves in a political game designed to solidify power. Thutmose II, who married his half-sister Hatshepsut, strengthened his claim to the throne through this union. It wasn't just about producing heirs. It was about ensuring the purity of the bloodline, unmarred by foreign influence or other royal families. This marriage was a declaration that Egypt's power would remain within the confines of the royal family. Hatshepsut, who began her reign as the great royal wife, would later assume the title of Pharaoh herself. Her ascent to power was extraordinary, as it was rare for a woman to rule as Pharaoh. But her reign illustrates how royal marriages were not just about producing heirs, they were about ensuring a political legacy. Hatshepsut's rise to power was a perfect blend of ceremonial marriage and calculated political maneuvering. She didn't just marry into power, she claimed it for herself, using the strength of her bloodline and the political stability her marriage had ensured. Example of Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun, a union of pure blood. The story of Tutankhamun and his wife Ankhesenamun further underscores the importance of marriage within the royal family. Tutankhamun, who ascended to the throne at a very young age, married his half-sister Ankhesenamun. This union, which kept the bloodline intact, was essential in ensuring that Egypt's royal lineage remained pure and unbroken. The children of Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun would inherit a divine legitimacy, their bloodline forever tied to the gods and the pharaohs of Egypt. Despite the tragic brevity of Tutankhamun's reign, his marriage to Ankhesenamun demonstrates the centrality of bloodline in Egyptian royal politics. Their union wasn't just about personal affection, it was about securing the continuity of Egypt's divine kingship. The royal family didn't simply produce heirs, it produced rulers who carried the sacred duty of maintaining Egypt's power for generations to come. Not all marriages were within the family, Nefertiti's role. While royal marriages within the family were the norm, there were exceptional cases that defied tradition. One such case was the marriage of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Nefertiti's royal lineage is somewhat unclear, yet she became one of Egypt's most powerful queens. Her marriage to Akhenaten was not dictated solely by bloodline purity, but it nonetheless became a powerful political alliance. This union represented a break from traditional power structures, yet it still maintained legitimacy through the connection between Nefertiti and the pharaoh. Nefertiti's role in Egyptian history serves as a reminder that, while bloodline marriages were the norm, there were exceptions. Her story shows how personal and political factors could sometimes shift the course of history. Nefertiti was not only a powerful queen, but also a key figure in the religious revolution led by her husband, Akhenaten. Her legacy reminds us that while royal marriages often adhered to the bloodline tradition, there were moments when political alliances and personal ambition could change the course of Egypt's royal history. The heir and the dynasty. Who gets the throne, the purity of the bloodline was critical, but it wasn't the only factor that determined who would ascend to the throne. While many royal marriages were designed to secure a legitimate heir, it wasn't always the firstborn child from the great royal wife who became the pharaoh. political realities often played a crucial role in determining who would rule. Despite this, the great royal wife's children had the greatest chance of ascending to the throne, as they carried the weight of legitimacy and divine right. The fluidity of succession in ancient Egypt is an important point to note. While the firstborn son of the great royal wife was often seen as the rightful heir, this was not always the case. Political alliances, the king's favor, and the influence of powerful factions within the court could shift the line of succession. However, the bloodline always remained central. Marrying within the family ensured that Egypt's royal power remained intact, and the heirs who ascended to the throne were seen as divinely chosen, carrying with them the sacred responsibility of maintaining transition. The purity of the bloodline ensures stability. As we reflect on these royal marriages, we begin to understand the deep connection between marriage, power, and legitimacy in ancient Egypt. The bloodline was not just an ancestry, it was a means to ensure stability, control, and the continuation of divine rule. These marriages were meticulously planned, each one part of a grand design that spanned generations. They were more than just unions of individuals. They were the threads that held the kingdom together. Royal marriages were essential in maintaining Egypt's connection to the gods. The king's marriage was a divine act, one that ensured the stability of the cosmos itself. Through these marriages, Egypt's rulers solidified their legitimacy, ensuring that their reigns were divinely sanctioned. The royal bloodline, carefully preserved through these strategic unions, was the key to Egypt's continued prosperity and power. However, as we move forward, we will see that royal marriages in Egypt were not only about bloodlines, they were also about the alliances they forged and the influence they brought to Egypt. These unions went beyond the royal family, influencing Egypt's relations with other nations and securing the kingdom's place in the wider world. In the next chapter, we will explore how the pharaohs used marriage to build alliances with foreign powers, securing Egypt's place on the global stage. Through these marriages, Egypt's rulers not only maintained their power within Egypt, but also expanded their influence beyond its borders, shaping the future of the ancient world. As we continue our journey deeper into the labyrinth of royal Egypt, we arrive at a crucial intersection where bloodline and political power blend in unexpected ways. The practice of diplomatic marriages, while royal unions within the Egyptian family ensured the purity of the bloodline and the continuation of divine kingship, there were also unions forged with foreign powers, alliances made through marriage. These marriages served as vital tools for maintaining peace, securing trade routes, and guaranteeing Egypt's dominance on the world stage. In the vast and expansive land of Egypt, the pharaoh's marriage was not only a domestic matter, but a global strategy. For centuries, the ancient Egyptians recognized that controlling their borders and trade routes was as important as maintaining their lineage. Thus, when Egypt faced external threats or sought to enhance its political influence, marriages with foreign royal families became a pivotal means of securing those interests. Princesses from lands like Mitanni, Hittite, and Babylon would be brought into the fold, their royal blood mixing with the pharaohs to create alliances that transcended the boundaries of Egypt itself. But what did these alliances truly mean for Egypt? Did these royal marriages strengthen Egypt's divine claim to power, or were they merely pragmatic tools of diplomacy and survival? The answer lies in understanding the delicate balance of power between Egypt and its neighbors and how these diplomatic marriages ensured that balance remained stable, even in the face of threats and changing alliances. Princesses from foreign lands, the oath of alliance. As we enter this chapter of history, let us first meet the foreign princesses, women from faraway lands who became central figures in Egypt's political strategy. These women, though often far from the center of Egypt's divine kingship, played pivotal roles in shaping the course of history. Take, for example, the marriage of Ramesses II to a Hittite princess. This union, born out of the famous Treaty of Kadesh, was not a marriage of love, but a marriage of necessity. The Hittites, a powerful empire to the north, had long been a thorn in Egypt's side. After years of conflict, a peace treaty was negotiated, sealed not just with promises, but with the marriage of Ramesses to the daughter of the Hittite king. This marriage solidified the peace between Egypt and the Hittites and ensured a long-standing political alliance between the two great powers. But such alliances were not always simple or easy. Often, these marriages required compromises and the surrender of sovereignty in certain areas. The princess from Mitanni, who became the wife of Amenhotep III, brought with her not only her beauty and grace, but also the backing of her father's powerful kingdom. Egypt's royal family, by marrying this princess, secured a strategic alliance that strengthened its position in the broader region. This alliance helped Egypt maintain peace along its borders and fostered economic prosperity through trade with the Mitanni. These marriages also signaled Egypt's dominance and the willingness of foreign kingdoms to recognize the power of the pharaohs. The pharaoh, while wielding political power domestically, was also extending his influence abroad. By taking foreign princesses as wives, he was demonstrating that Egypt was not only the greatest of civilizations in terms of divine rule, but also in terms of political and military strength. Power through diplomacy. The role of foreign royal marriages were also crucial in ensuring that Egypt's diplomatic efforts were recognized and respected. In the case of Tutankhamun and his marriage to his half-sister Ankhesenamun, it's clear that the union was partly about maintaining royal legitimacy. However, when Tutankhamun died unexpectedly, his widow Ankhesenamun sent an urgent message to the Hittite king, asking for one of his sons to be sent to marry her and take the throne. This act underscores how the pharaohs, even in their domestic affairs, had to constantly consider their position in the larger geopolitical world. The pharaoh's marriage to a foreign princess was not just about cementing peace. It was a statement that Egypt's divine authority extended beyond the borders of the Nile, and that foreign powers were willing to submit to this divine kingship. In a world where might often made right, marriage was one of the most effective ways to assert power and influence. Yet, it is also important to recognize the political complications that arose from these alliances. Foreign princesses, while they brought valuable connections, also brought their own cultures, religions, and expectations. This meant that Egyptian pharaoh often found themselves navigating the delicate balance between honoring their foreign wives' heritage while maintaining Egypt's deeply entrenched religious and cultural practices. These marriages, while pragmatic, were also fraught with tension. The pharaoh and the foreign bride. Political and religious tensions marrying foreign princesses often led to cultural exchanges and even religious conflicts. While Egypt's rulers were divine kings, the gods of other lands were often just as powerful. Thus, when a foreign princess entered Egypt's court, her gods were sometimes brought along with her. For example, when Akhenaten married the Mitanni princess Ti, the political alliance was solidified. However, this marriage came with its own set of challenges. Ti, being of foreign descent, was a devout follower of her homeland's gods, and it is believed that her influence contributed to Akhenaten's radical religious reforms. Akhenaten's attempt to impose the worship of the sun, this god and above all other gods, caused friction with Egypt's powerful priesthood, and Ti's potential influence on him is often considered a factor in these tumultuous religious changes. Thus, royal marriages that began with pragmatic purposes often resulted in religious and cultural conflicts. While these marriages helped solidify Egypt's external power, they also required a careful navigation of Egypt's deeply rooted traditions and beliefs. The influence of foreign queens could bring a new perspective, but it also could shake the foundations of the kingdom if those perspectives conflicted with the pharaoh's divine authority. The marriage of power, securing Egypt's legacy. In the grand scheme of Egypt's history, royal marriages were essential for the pharaohs to maintain their position in both domestic and international affairs. These unions were not simply matters of personal affection, but rather strategic moves that ensured Egypt's place as the preeminent power of the ancient world. By marrying foreign princesses, pharaohs could secure alliances that gave them military, economic, and diplomatic advantages, all while asserting their divine right to rule. These marriages were symbolic, too. They were a physical manifestation of Egypt's dominance, a statement that Egypt was not only the center of the world, but that its influence extended far beyond its borders. The gods of Egypt, as seen through the lens of these royal marriages, were powerful enough to unite distant lands in peace, trade, and cooperation. As we conclude this chapter of Egypt's royal history, we see that marriage for the pharaohs was never just a personal affair. It was a complex web of political strategy, cultural exchange, and divine authority. The pharaoh's marriage to a foreign princess was an instrument of peace, a diplomatic tool, and a declaration of power, ensuring Egypt's legacy for centuries to come. But the story of Egypt's royal marriages does not end here. We will continue to explore how, despite the divine and political importance of these unions, the challenges faced by the pharaohs went beyond bloodlines and diplomacy. They had to deal with the ambitions of foreign courts, the unrest within their own temples, and the eternal question of who would inherit their sacred throne. In the next chapter, we will examine how these internal and external challenges shape Egypt's future and the eventual fall of the great Egyptian dynasties. We've explored the bloodlines, alliances, and divine legitimacy tied to the royal marriage of the pharaohs. But now we enter a more complex territory, As we delve into the royal harem, we uncover a world of power dynamics, personal ambition, and political intrigue where not just one queen, but many women, each with their own titles, rank, and influence, stood at the heart of Egypt's royal household. The harem was not merely a collection of wives and concubines. It was a strategic breeding ground for future rulers, a space where succession was shaped, and where Egypt's power could either thrive or fracture. In the royal harem, marriages were not just about love or companionship, they were about maintaining Egypt's grip on power through the careful management of lineage. Here, multiple wives and consorts coexisted, each vying for influence, often wielding their political capital in subtle ways. The pharaoh, as the figurehead of this intricate web of marriages, had to navigate the delicate balance of relationships between his wives, children, and advisors. A single misstep in the harem could lead to political chaos, rebellion, or a challenge to the throne itself. In this chapter, we explore how the harem functioned not just as a symbol of the pharaoh's power, but as the epicenter of Egypt's succession politics. Through the lens of multiple marriages, we also uncover the ways in which the battle for the throne played out behind closed doors. Who would ascend after the pharaoh? Would the firstborn son from the great royal wife inherit the throne, or would the political tides of the time allow for a child from a secondary wife to seize power? The royal harem, a complex web of wives, concubines, and influence. The royal harem was not just a physical space, it was a powerful institution in its own right. The great royal wife, who held the most esteemed position in the pharaoh's heart, was only one of many women who played pivotal roles in the succession process. While she held the title of primary wife, it was not uncommon for the pharaoh to marry numerous other women concubines, princesses from foreign lands, and even women from noble Egyptian families. Each marriage, whether strategic or for companionship, held its own significance in the delicate political landscape of Egypt. Among the women of the harem, the great royal wife held the highest rank. She was seen as the pharaoh's most important partner, the one who shared in the divine responsibility of ruling Egypt. Yet, despite her revered position, she was not the only one who could produce heirs to the throne. The other wives and concubines, especially those who bore sons, were crucial to the continuity of Egypt's royal family. The rank of each wife was not static. It shifted with the political climate and the pharaoh's changing needs. Some wives were born into powerful families. Others were foreign princesses brought in through marriage to secure alliances, and some were simply favored for their beauty or personal connection to the pharaoh. The position of the great royal wife could be usurped if a more powerful or influential wife bore a son, especially one with political backing. In some cases, secondary wives could secure their own power by producing a child who had strong support from the court or the military. This often led to complex power struggles as sons of lesser wives fought for their right to the throne, supported by factions within Egypt's elite. The role of the heir, the battle for succession. In ancient Egypt, the heir to the throne was not always clear-cut. While the firstborn son of the great royal wife was traditionally seen as the rightful successor, this was not always the case. Power struggles within the royal family could determine who ascended the throne. Sons from secondary wives or even concubines were often thrust into the battle for supremacy. especially if they had strong political backing or military support. One of the most famous examples of this is the story of Thutmose III, the son of a lesser wife of Thutmose II. Although Thutmose III was not the firstborn son, his stepmother, Hatshepsut, ruled as pharaoh for many years, keeping him out of the throne. Hatshepsut's rise to power was unconventional, as she had no male heir of her own, and so she took on the role of pharaoh, despite being a woman. However, Thutmose III eventually took his rightful place on the throne, ruling Egypt as one of its greatest pharaohs. His reign is a testament to the complexities of succession and the fierce competition for power within the royal family. Another example can be seen in the reign of Tutankhamun, who was the child of Akhenaten and one of his lesser wives, Kia. After Akhenaten's death, Tutankhamun ascended the throne at a young age, and his reign was marked by political instability and the eventual influence of powerful figures like Ea and Horemheb, who sought to control the throne. Although Tutankhamun was born into the royal family, his brief reign highlights how royal marriages, even those from secondary wives, could produce heirs who faced intense political pressure and competition for the throne. Power struggles in the harem, ambition and rivalry. The harem was not just a passive backdrop for royal succession, it was a battlefield of ambition and rivalry. Each wife and concubine who bore the pharaoh children was a potential contender for power. The rise and fall of the great royal wife depended on whether she could bear a male heir who was accepted by the court as the legitimate ruler of Egypt. If a rival wife produced a son with the backing of the court or the military, the great royal wife's status could be threatened, and political alliances could shift in her favor. This internal rivalry could lead to significant political unrest. Sometimes factions within the harem would seek to influence the pharaoh's decisions either through persuasion or through more drastic measures. In some cases, secondary wives and their children would even resort to political intrigue, such as plotting the death of rivals to ensure their own line's ascendancy. The story of Smenkhkare, the brief ruler of Egypt after Akhenaten's death, provides another example of the internal politics within the royal family. Smenkkare's reign was marked by uncertainty and the struggle for control of Egypt's throne. His status as a potential heir is debated, and his death remains mysterious, raising questions about the political machinations that may have influenced the succession. Conclusion: the harem as the heart of Egyptian power. The royal harem was much more than just a private space for the pharaoh. It was the epicenter of Egypt's succession politics. Each marriage, each wife, and each child born into the harem played a role in determining who would rule Egypt next. The harem was a place of intrigue, power struggles, and political calculations where the fate of the nation was often decided behind closed doors. In this world, bloodlines were sacred, but ambition and alliances often held just as much power. As we move forward, we will see how these complex dynamics played out in the later years of Egypt's royal history. The challenges of succession, the tensions within the royal family, and the external threat Egypt faced would all contribute to the eventual decline of the great Egyptian dynasties. In the next chapter, we will explore how these internal power struggles, combined with external pressures, shaped the downfall of Egypt's once mighty empire. As we approach the final chapter of this story, we find ourselves reflecting on the many layers of royal marriages in ancient Egypt. We've seen how bloodlines, divine legitimacy, and political alliances shape the destinies of both the pharaohs and their kingdoms. But as with all complex systems, there are exceptions, flexibilities, and nuances that demand attention. It is in these exceptions that we find some of the most intriguing and revealing aspects of royal marriage. At the heart of Egypt's marital rules, there was a framework, a hierarchy of marriage that prioritized royal bloodlines with a strong emphasis on preserving Mat, the sacred order of the world. The first preference was always for a royal marriage, often between siblings or within the royal family itself, ensuring that the bloodline remained pure. Foreign princesses could be brought into the fold to strengthen political alliances, but they did not disrupt the core of Egypt's ruling bloodline. And yet, in this system, there were always exceptions, moments where the rules were bent or reshaped to serve a greater political or divine purpose. For example, the great royal wife was often someone within the royal bloodline, a sister, a daughter, or a close relative of the pharaoh. This ensured that the pharaoh's heirs were born into a family steeped in divine legitimacy. Yet there were times when a known royal woman would ascend to the position of great royal wife, like Tai, the wife of Amenhotep III, who was not of royal descent but came from a prominent and influential family. Her rise is a testament to the fact that even in the most rigid systems, flexibility existed. The pharaohs understood that political necessity sometimes called for adjustments in the bloodline. Additionally, there were times when marriages were used to legitimize heirs who were not born of the purest royal blood. In some cases, a pharaoh may have married a noble woman or even a woman from a conquered or allied kingdom to solidify their rule and create a stable succession. These marriages could serve a dual purpose, preserving the royal bloodline while also ensuring that the pharaoh had strong ties with his kingdom's elites or foreign allies. So when we ask, who truly has the right to marry the pharaoh, the answer is not a simple one. The right to marry the pharaoh was not defined solely by birthright or bloodline. It was defined by the ability to preserve Mat, the cosmic order, and the political stability of Egypt. Marriages were made to strengthen Egypt's power not just domestically, but also on the global stage. The true answer is that those who reinforced the divine order of Egypt through bloodlines, political alliances, and strategic marriages were those who held the keys to the kingdom. The great royal wife, the foreign princess, the concubine, and even the secondary wives all had roles to play in Egypt's continuing reign. The rules of marriage, while strict, were also adaptable when the need arose. And in the end, it was the balance of bloodline, religion, and politics that defined who had the right to be the pharaoh's spouse. A quiet reflection, the pharaoh's marital system. As we draw this exploration to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the subtle power behind the royal marriages of Egypt. These unions were not merely personal, they were the very threads that held Egypt's kingdom together. In the quiet chambers of the Harem, under the watchful eyes of the gods and the shadow of Mat, marriages were forged not just for the pharaoh and his wives, but for the stability of the nation itself. Each marriage carried the weight of Egypt's history, its future, and its connection to the divine. The story of the Pharaohs' marriages teaches us that even in a system that appears rigid and absolute, there is room for flexibility and change. Adaptation and pragmatism were not only allowed, they were often necessary for the continued prosperity of Egypt. Like the Nile's floodwaters, which brought both destruction and renewal, the Pharaohs knew that their marriages, while rooted in tradition, had to evolve in response to the changing needs of their kingdom and the world beyond. The eternal legacy of Pharaoh's marriages as the sun sets on Egypt's ancient past. The Pharaoh's marriages remain etched in the walls of temples and tombs. The power of these unions, the divine right to rule, the sacred preservation of bloodlines, the political alliances that bound nations together continues to shape the myth and legend of ancient Egypt. But beyond the tombs and hieroglyphs, we are reminded that these marriages were the embodiment of balance. The Pharaohs, through marriage, who are entrusted with the power to shape the world for generations to come. And so, in the quiet, still night, as the sands of Egypt continue to shift, the legacy of the Pharaohs